Ukrainian troops face 11,000 Russian troops besieging the city of Pokrovsk. Russian soldiers have advanced further into the city of Pokrovsk, threatening not only to take the city, but to complete a larger encirclement of the surrounding areas, as independent analysts and commanders report a serious deterioration of the Ukrainian position in the area. The defense of the major city in Donetsk Oblast, which has held out for over a year of heavy fighting as one of the main hotspots of the front line, looks to have begun falling apart as Russian soldiers in their hundreds have broken into the city limits, spreading in all directions.
Так!
According to the Ukrainian military, 11,000 Russian troops have been concentrated around Pokrovsk in an attempt to surround the city, with President Volodymyr Zelensky telling journalists on October 27 that Russian forces outnumbered Ukrainian defenders 8-1, in a bizarre comment, especially considering the recent uptick in fatal attacks on journalists near the front line. Putin added that Russian forces would be prepared to cease fire in the respective areas for a few hours so that Ukrainian and foreign journalists could enter, speak to Ukrainian soldiers, and confirm for themselves the state that these surrounded forces are in. Ukrainian commanders' reports as well as open-source data show that Putin's claim of a complete encirclement is still far from reality, but the situation is undoubtedly highly dynamic and deteriorating for the defending side. In a grim development, Russian forces managed to plant the Russian flag on the entrance sign at the western edge of Pokrovsk on October 29. Though the flag is more an exercise in information options than a solid indicator of territorial control. Though Russian forces first reached the outskirts of Pokrovsk around late autumn 2024, it wasn't until mid-2025 that the first successful penetrations into the city itself were successfully realized. In late July, several dozen Russian soldiers broke into the southern neighborhoods of Pokrovsk, taking advantage of the thinly spread Ukrainian lines to seep through the defending positions into the city. At the time, the infiltration already presented a serious threat to the defense of the city, but thanks to the quick redeployment of specialist assault units, the Russian troops involved were isolated and eliminated before allowing them to dig in and spread further. By October 27, Ukraine's general staff admitted that around 200 Russian soldiers had amassed in the city. In these conditions of chaotic urban fighting, the idea of a clear front line becomes increasingly blurry, and the task of mapping it for mapping projects, such as the highly regarded independent mapping and analyst group Deep State, becomes increasingly counterproductive. They don't control the city. They don't control any whole neighborhoods, said Roman Porelier, co-founder of Deep State. They just moved around chaotically, conduct sabotage and reconnaissance operations, including ambushes. According to the Deep State map, a corridor around 3 kilometers wide remains between the two Russian pincers, although these markings are based on only geolocations of isolated Russian presence and do not reflect territorial control. While Pokrovsk has turned into a large and chaotic gray zone, the real threat of encirclement hangs over the sister city of Minaret, which lies to the east of Pokrovsk, deeper inside the existing pocket. Here, Ukrainian forces led by the 25th Airborne and 38th Marine Brigades have maintained a defense relatively stable to that of Pokrovsk, aided by favorable terrain and the efficient use of drones. For now, said the deputy commander of one Ukrainian unit holding positions in the city, speaking to the Kiev Independent on the condition of anonymity. The greater danger to his troops is not an encirclement on the ground, but control of all logistics routes into Mirnorad by Russian drones and artillery. Recently, a Russian flag has been spotted flying in the Ukrainian city of Pokrovsk. Russian forces have been trying to seize the vital rail and logistics hub since a major offensive was launched in July 2024. But despite sustaining enormous losses, they have failed to take the city, thanks to heroic Ukrainian defense, which has inflicted tens of thousands of casualties on Vladimir Putin's men. However, as has often been the case since the invasion in 2022, Russia is making a slow but undeniable progress. Earlier this week, reports suggested fighting was taking place in the city center. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky acknowledged that Russian forces now have a foothold in the city and that sabotage groups are now operating there. He estimated their number at around 200 and insisted the city had not yet fallen. However, Ukrainian defenders are under desperate pressure. Russia's Chief of General Staff, General Valery Gerasimov, has claimed that the city is surrounded, although that has been called into question by many analysts. Ukrainian troops are constantly harassed by huge numbers of Russian drones, though making resupply, evacuations, and troop rotations difficult. Ukraine is also deploying massive numbers of drones itself to keep hold of the city. Not only are they used to strike or bomb Russian troops and positions, but also to resupply troops. Ground drones are even being used to evacuate casualties. Now, video footage has shown a Russian flag flying at one of the highway entrances to the city. It is not clear if it was planted by hand, drone, or other vehicle, and its material importance is negligible. However, its symbolic value is significant. It shows Russian forces are able to operate at the city's gates with relative impunity and is likely to provide a propaganda victory for the Kremlin. Reports have suggested that it has since been destroyed, although this has not yet been confirmed.
Граната!